Good morning, America. I am Jesse, a future professional tennis player.
And I'm Onika, and I look up to Jesse.
And I'm Daren, and I also look up to Jesse.
We are the number one podcast in the world, and we're called the Mixed Beaners. And we're all high schoolers. In today's episode, we talk about Black history over the years and how it evolved into today's society. Guys, our last episode, it was quite interesting. We talked about communism.
That's where the government owns everything.
I believe as of today, China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam fall under communism. And we also talked about the Vietnam War,
which many soldiers suffer from PTSD, and rates of divorce, suicide, alcoholism, and drug addiction rise amongst veterans.
I believe in the United States, parents were against sending their kids into Vietnam because it was a huge failure and many people died. It was quite sad. Anywho, today's topic is Black history and how it evolved to the present day. Guys, before Kennedy's death, MLK was protesting for equal rights.
Who is MLK and what's his backstory?
Martin Luther King Jr. was born January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. He mostly had a happy, normal childhood where him and his siblings learned how to play piano from their mom. I'm unsure if they liked playing piano, but if they continue doing it, then that's very good. King came from a comfortable middle-class family and stepped into tradition of Southern Black ministry. His father and grandfather led him and his siblings spiritually. His father, and grandfather were also Baptist preachers. He was an ordinary kid who did ordinary childhood activities with a happy, normal life.
This MLK guy, do you think he was cute, Onika?
No, I don't think so.
Do you think he put any girls?
Probably as a kid, but I really don't know.
Would you date him?
No.
Is it because he's black, Onika?
No, it's not. Anyways, although he had a happy childhood, he almost tried to commit suicide at the age of 12 due to the death of his grandmother, who he was super close to. In a quote, King states, "I always had resentment towards the system of segregation and felt that it was a grave injustice." Basically, he's talking about how he felt his grandmother's death was unjustified and she shouldn't have died during the time that was segregation.
I do believe I would also be sad if my grandma died.
I would say, actually. I'm very close to my own grandmother, so yeah.
Actually, my grandma did die. But that I was sad. I hope Martin Luther King, I believe Martin Luther King would want to have his grandma watch him protest.
After that, King grew and began preaching that segregation was harmful not only to Black Americans but also to the nation as a whole. His involvement in the civil rights movement began during the bus boycotts of 1965.
By doing so, he decided to have peaceful protests. Why was that important?
Well, during the time, many white people didn't really believe that African Americans had the same respect or anything they had, so by proving the white people wrong, they did peaceful protests, which led to more and more white people being sided with them and, supporting them in every single way they could.
So that's why he was important. That's interesting.
Yes. Well, Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister and a social rights activist in the United States in the 1950s and 60s. He was also a very big inspiration in the civil rights movement and brought people together to fight for equality. Martin Luther King Jr. was one, if not the biggest influence during his era, and brought about doing peaceful protests instead of relying on violence. One of the peaceful protests he did was the March at Washington in 1964. He also led a boycott against the buses in Alabama because the city refused to let African Americans in the front seats and only in the back. The boycott in Alabama would continue to go on until there were changes in the rules. He was later arrested along with hundreds of school children who participated during the boycott.
Daren, why did you think MLK wanted peaceful protests?
Well, like I said before, peaceful protests helped make them look good and had helped them with white people supporting them, which was very good. Other than another person who had movements that were relied on violence. I
They were called the Black Panthers. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Black Panther Party.
Yeah. They were doing bad stuff.
They mainly just relied on violence.
Yes.
That was their main code, and
But not relied on it. They
Believe.
they believe that if you needed violence, then you should use it. Like especially towards police that were fighting with them and all of that.
which in the end didn't really help because it just made them look more and more bad.
Yeah. Also, his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," it was quite a hit. Many people attended it, and many white Americans sided with him and wanted to be with him.
Well, this wouldn't be the first time MLK was arrested because he was also arrested about 30 times in his previous protests and
crazy.
movements. He also later won the Nobel Peace Prize, which at the time made him the youngest person to ever receive it. Martin Luther King Jr. was actually sadly assassinated by a man named James Earl Ray, who shot him in the second story of his motel room on April 4th, 1968.
Damn, I guess many people didn't want him to succeed.
How do you think people reacted towards his death?
Many people actually were very, very angry. They actually started riots. They actually went against mainly what MLK was going for, which was peaceful protests. Instead, after his death, they were very angry to the point where they had riots, bad protests, and more after that.
Wow.
Well,
Okay, so black people have been discriminated against ever since the 1900s and continue to be so. The black community has been loved little by little. Interracial relationships are a thing now. Having the first black president has been something new, which was Barack Obama. The big rise of hip hop. African Americans have had a huge impact on society over the years. There's been many police brutality and deaths caused by it and has been overlooked many times. But not anymore. As of May of 2020, during the COVID year, an African American citizen by the name of George Floyd, who was killed in an arrest by an ex-police officer named Daren, who didn't let him breathe by kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, causing his death. What do you guys think about that?
I actually saw the video. It was so sad, and he was like screaming for help, and I really felt for him.
Yeah, when I also saw it, I was like, damn. This is really sad.
I heard about it and I felt very bad for the family. I mean, I don't really like hearing about that stuff, but once I hear about it, it's like I don't understand why people do it to this day.
I didn't believe that it would have. I believed it was gonna be overlooked and just a normal black guy dying. Anywho, this was a spinal straw for many Americans. It caused riots and raids in the capital of Virginia and Maryland. They also invaded the White House, which was something big. I think also CNN was raided. Many stores were robbed, all because of George Floyd's death. I believe it was something historical and will be in the books later in the years. So overall, African Americans, aka Black people, have come along a long way, from suffering to justice to freedom. In the end, we all come from the same egg and can do the same things. No one is different. Without the freedom that MLK and many others had fought for over the years, there wouldn't be any of these famous artists or actors such as Kevin Hart, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. If we think about it, we need each other. There isn't control in the world. Yes, it's the truth. Thanks for listening us rant about Black history. And the next episode, guys, we'll be talking about the LGBTQ. So stay tuned.